Hey, everybody. I'm Alex Kehaya, and welcome to The Index. Today, I am very excited to sit down with Nemil Dalal, head of developer program at Coinbase. It's one of the most influential platforms in crypto. Everybody listening to the show has probably already heard of Coinbase. I've been a Coinbase customer ever since I've been in crypto since like 2016. So excited to have you here. And I want to dive into how Coinbase is empowering developers through powerful API tools like X402 and the future of AI native finance. But before we get into that, Nemil, thank you for being here. Appreciate you coming on the show.
Super excited to be here, Alex. Thanks for having me.
So I'm really excited to get into this intersection of AI and like AI native finance and kind of get Coinbase's view on that and also talk about X402. We were kind of touching on that before the show, but before we do, I'd really just love to learn more about you and why you're here. Like what got you to Coinbase, working in crypto, and what gets you out of bed every day to be working on this stuff?
Yeah. So maybe two things is like one of the jokes I have is like, it's kind of like a superhero origin story where everyone in crypto has a story about how they got into the space. And for me, I think there are two cool like experiences. One was my dad's friend growing up was one of the inventors of the blockchain. So he had like 3 of the like 8 citations in the Satoshi white paper. And then one day I found myself in Y Combinator and I met Brian Armstrong. And he was handing out Bitcoin at the time for anyone who signed up for, it was called BitBank at the time. And it was a website he was building. And eventually it became Coinbase. And I just it made me want to read the white paper. And I got super excited. And I think each person has their reason for why they got excited. For me, the thing I got most excited about was the smart contract language, where I was like, as a developer, I could build like anything. And most of the time with the financial system, it's super permissioned. You have to work at a large financial institution, get approvals from a ton of different people to be able to consider to build anything. But with crypto, there's this like built-in language and there's the ability to like be safe. You can set escrow contracts and things like that. And I was like, this is it. The world is like never going to be the same again. And so I started with Bitcoin, then Ethereum launched with smart contracts, and the rest is history. Eventually in 2018, I joined Balaji Srinivasan, who was the CTO at Coinbase, to run USDC. So I ran that from like a few tens of million in market cap to about $1 billion in market cap. That was a really wild experience of its own. But that gets me to where I am today, which is running developer products. And I run the Coinbase developer platform, or cdp.coinbase.com.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, you have touched some enormous projects that have gotten quite good. Like running USDC, for example, is like one of the backbone projects of crypto, obviously. I mean, I'm assuming that's on Coinbase, right? But still, that's huge. Very cool. I want to learn more about. So I guess at a high level, before we get into like the details, like what is the general direction of the developer platform for Coinbase, and what are people using it for today? Like, what are the kinds of things you're seeing built on Coinbase via the developer platform? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So let me, before we started, you talked a little bit about how you were a Rails programmer at one point, and I was sharing with you that I was a Rails programmer as well. And so let me just situate anyone who's a developer who hasn't built on-chain. Let me situate you in that building on-chain is hard. And the reason it's hard is first of all, the APIs are just not as easy and simple. The SDKs are not as easy and simple. So what Rails did was revolutionize the way you build websites. I remember there's that blog, you could build a blog app. That was their first sample app. And I would just say blockchain development is super difficult, relatively speaking, number one. 2 is security is a huge concern. Whenever money's involved, you can't lose money. It's a really, really important thing for your customers. And that's how Coinbase has really invested for years in trust and safety as you think about it. And there's security, there's also a lot of regulatory stuff. So if you're a web developer, you're coming on chain and you're trying to build something, it is much, much harder than you might be used to most of the time. And our vision basically is that we want to make it super easy. We want to make it as easy, if not easier, than what it is to build in Web 2. And again, Web 2 today is Rails, but it's even further than that. It's vibe coding and all these other things that make it super easy today. That's the experience that we want to build to building on chain. And then in terms of our slogan is basically we want 1 billion users with 1 million developers building for them. And by comparison, I don't know, there's 25, 30 million developers in the world. About 50,000 of them are building on chain today. So the numbers are relatively tiny. And yet, all the things are coming together. Blockchains are super fast now. gas fees have come down a ton. I remember paying $50 to $100 a transaction in 2020. Now these are down to like cents or less. Settlement times are a matter of a second or two. I remember waiting 10 minutes, for Bitcoin blocks, waiting for 20, 30 seconds, or, several blocks often on Ethereum. All of that has changed today. So that is just to situate us as like where we are today, is that like we want to make that super easy. We have a ton of products already that do that. So we have things like, if you're ever at Hackathon, on-chain kit means that in a few lines of React, you can build any type of widget on top of on-chain products. So for example, if I want to build the ability to trade in a few lines of React, like 5 or 7 lines, I can suddenly embed a trade widget into my application. And so we've seen this really, really powerful as a way to get started. It's also great for front-end developers to be able to use it. And then happy to talk about some of the other products, but the things we're also excited about, this agent kit, which makes it easy to add a wallet to an AI agent. I can talk a little bit more about why that's interesting. And then there, even just the bread and butter stuff, like moving money from fiat into crypto. That's what our on-ramp product does, is make it super easy, make it free for USDC to be able to move from your bank account or your debit card into crypto.
Yeah, which is a huge feature. I mean, for me, it's one of the reasons why I've stuck with Coinbase so long, is because of that feature alone. It's just like easily swapping USDC for fiat and back and forth. It's interesting the narrative of how hard it's been to build. My first company that I built in the cryptocurrency space is a company called Olaplex, and it was an NFT marketplace storefront thing on Solana, and we had to invent indexing software in order to get that off the ground, and massive amount of resources spent on that. We were one of the first teams to build an open source indexer for Solana, and yeah, lots of friction that you guys are taking away, which is really, really nice, and it's fun to see how far that's come. One of the things in the prep for this call that caught my eye was this X402 product. And what I was reading up about is like a new way to charge for API access to something.
Yeah.
And I got really excited about that because not only can you make it easier than Web 2 in the future, I think I agree with that thesis or what you guys are trying to accomplish to build applications, but there's this new mechanic for finance on chain, right? That's composable and permissionless. And I'm wondering like how this ties into if you can explain to me the 402 product, because paying for API access, I'm assuming on chain, that seems kind of exciting to me, but I would love to understand what that looks like. I'm making a bunch of leaps because I haven't actually read anything about the product yet. I just read my show notes about it, and I kind of understand how it works and what the innovations are there.
Yeah. So let me situate you first to Agent Kit, which is this open source tooling. So about 6 months ago, what we realized was there are all these AI agents out there, and there are even personalities. Like if you ever use Characters AI, you can really like train it on a personality, and you're talking as if you're talking to that celebrity. And what we noticed was that a lot of people wanted to be able to have a wallet combined with that. So for example, you might want to tip that agent in crypto. And so they wanted a way to be able to collect that. Or the agent itself wanted to go do stuff with money. So for example, I want to make a commerce transaction or wanted to send money to people who are engaging in it within the right way. And so in, I think November, we launched Agent Kit, and it made it super easy to take any AI agent. So we use the power of something called LangChain to be able to connect to anything from like, OpenAI, Claude, et cetera, any AI agent you want. And we made it super easy to add a wallet, and then you can do any action with that wallet. So anything you can do on chain, you're able to do with that wallet, which includes sending and receiving funds, allows you the ability to be able to do arbitrary smart contract actions, so trading and things like that. And this is where it got really interesting, is that like we've had 20,000 plus agents be created, all with on-chain wallets. And like one example of a company that's used this is Virtuals, which has been really, really like just huge. It's been really impressive what they've done. But they basically take an AI agent personality, including Luna and a few others, and they paired it with that AI wallet, the on-chain wallet. And we noticed a few types of like use cases that people are wanting to do. Probably one of the more popular one was, I want to let my AI agent trade on-chain. I wanted to do some cool arbitrage, make some money for me. And AI agents are smart. They're smart. They're autonomous. They should be able to do that. And one of the things that we consistently noticed people running into was AI agents they don't have a credit card. They can't really necessarily like swipe a credit card. Anytime there's an API that's a closed API, they can't access it. Because right now, most of the time, developers use something called like an API key. So what they do is they They sign up. You've probably done this a lot, Alex, and you're starting your company as you go. You sign up for an API key. And what do you need? You first need a credit card. You need to sign up for that. And then you're able to you get the API key, then you can use it. But none of the internet was built for AI agents as the default user. They're really all built for humans. And so what we realized was AI agents needed a really simple way to be able to access APIs. And it shouldn't be this UI world. Like I go to the UI, I sign up for it, I put down a credit card. Instead of the way it should work is that I ask for an API, the API responds with, hey, send me some money in the form of crypto, and you can access the API, as much or as little as you need. And that's exactly what X402 is. It's an open standard, so anyone can build on it. And when the internet started, they had set aside this 402 HTTP code. So whenever you go to a website, you might get a 200, which means everything is okay when you load a website. But there's something else called 402, which is payment required. And it was never defined. It was never implemented. But it basically said that hey, if you receive that, implementation to be determined or something like that was in the spec that they put in. And so we said, this is amazing. People know that this could be there. Let's just define how it works and make it super easy for us to build working crypto. And again, I can go into all the details, but basically our vision is to be able to kill the API key, make it web that's super easy for AI agents to be able to access. And we think commerce is going to run, AI agents are going to do a tremendous amount of commerce in the years ahead. A simple example might be you want to go on vacation and you want it to be able to book the hotel. You want it to be able to book the plane tickets. You want to be able to book the tours. All of that today is not possible. And in a lot of ways, the blockchain is the ideal world to move money around because it's an open API. And that's awesome because AI is a machine and it knows how to talk to APIs.
Yeah. And what's insane about this is, I've been vibe coding, air quotes, with Codex lately, just playing around. And it's pretty good. I made a mobile game for an Android device in a couple hours, just hacking. And I can demo it and it works. And my idea was to make a mobile game that you have a leaderboard and then you pay in crypto to deposit, deposit 0.1 Sol, and anybody who has the highest score at the end of the week gets the pot. That's the whole thing. It's meant to be a super simple, fun game. And if I need data, for example, it's as a developer, right? If I need data from Solana or Ethereum or any chain, and I want to go get that data from an RPC provider, I have to sign up with a credit card. I have to get an API key. I then have to do the integration. But if you have an AI agent, they can just be I need this data, and they can find the RPC provider that has that data and then send a request. And because they get the 402 response back, then they get in that, I'm assuming how the standard works, right? If there's a response, if it requires payment, it tells me how much it's worth, how much I have to pay for whatever it is that I requested. AI agent pays it, and then they get the data back, right? And because it can write its own code, if it needs to integrate that somehow, it can just do that into its own software, right? I mean, am I crazy?
That's it.
It sounds crazy.
That's exactly what it is.
It's true.
Yeah. And the cool thing is if you wanted to do 100 API calls, you could just pay once, right? And you get a credit and you can use that, or you can pay every 100. And I think where it gets really interesting is it's not just you need one API key. Let's say you need something to touch 5 different things. You need a Twilio here, you need another API here, and you need another API here. That's a crazy thing for you to do, is go to sign up for every one of those. But if for $5 you could get all of those APIs used off the shelf and do pay per use.
Yeah, wild. Honestly, it's wild because I know it sounds simple. The idea kind of sounds simple, but it's so to get this right and to have it work across all these APIs is actually a pretty big effort. And the thing that keeps coming to my head right now is the velocity of money. There's so much friction in that process of just getting an API key, configuring it, doing all the things you got to do on their dashboard, paying them, all that stuff, and then adding the calls and going through the developer docs and all that stuff that you got to do to get the job done. And this just skips all of it and literally sends a request that pays for the gets a response, knows how much it needs to pay for the specific data it needs, and the AI gets the data back. And it happens literally as fast as the servers can talk to each other. It's wild.
That's
it's
yeah.
I know it's and again, I know might sound like an idiot here, but it's so, when you think about how if you've been vibe coding with Codex and you've seen how fast it can move, and it's only like a junior engineer, it's not even a junior engineer yet, like from an intelligence standpoint, it's not quite there because you kind of have to help it along. We're not that far away from these things actually being virtually autonomous and just like running around doing whatever task it is that you set them up to do. I mean, this X402 standard you guys set up, it might take over the whole internet. Like people are gonna implement it really quickly because of how much friction it takes out of the process of paying for an API. The conversion rates, like if you think of a sales funnel for like an API driven company, like a software development company that has an API business, the conversion, it takes the friction to zero, like time to convert a customer. If you just build something that has useful data in it or a useful feature or something like Twilio, it's game over. Like it's frictionless. It really is frictionless way to pay for something for an API.
Totally. And I think the biggest thing,
I'm not even trying to sell this. I'm not here to sell this idea. I'm just excited about it. Like it's pretty cool.
I think the biggest shift is just that like the internet was built for humans, and like things are changing so quickly now. And I would argue like probably the predominant use of the internet in a lot of ways will be AI, and humans will interact through the AI to everything else. And so in that world, everything we build is for that old world. And this is one way in which we can rethink that for the new world. And that's exactly right. So like, I think we just announced it last week. It's an open standard. So like Coinbase is going to build things on top of it to support it. Like for example, wallets, make it super easy to integrate. So it's not a lot of work, but it's an open standard and anyone can use it. We do not own it. And the hope is that like the rest of the internet, every company building an AI today is going to start integrating around it. That's the hope. And I would just say like only in that first week, we got a ton of like excitement and interest from folks. We had a lot of large companies reaching out to us to say, hey, how do we integrate this into our interfaces? So like stay tuned, but a few of the big brand names that you know and are going to be using this and are experimenting with it. And then there's a whole host of really awesome companies that are already integrated with it. And I can go through a few examples if that's helpful. But there's great examples like Nanar. Proxy 402 is a really awesome website that basically makes it super easy to wrap yourself. But people are like taking the standard and saying, how do we make it super easy for developers to do this? And they're just going on and doing it, which is really great to see.
Does it, so can I send payments on any of Coinbase's supported chains, or is it like just Base now, or like what networks can I use it on?
Yeah.
So can I just, since it's an open standard, I can just implement it to work with any network that I want as a developer? Like I can do it for Solana. Yeah.
The last thing is the plan. So we made an open standard, and we think that like they should work on any network. And so whatever network that there's some advantages to certain networks versus others. If you have a smart contract tooling like Solana, Base, and others can make it a little bit easier. But like we made the standard so that it can work on any network. So it's all standardized stuff that you can use to be able to build it. And then what we did was like at Coinbase Developer Platform, where we're getting started is like, we see so much developer traction and excitement. So we're starting with two networks to start, which is Base and Solana. But candidly, all EVMs we're going to be supporting. And basically what we'll do is we'll provide you a wallet. So if you want to be able to spin up a wallet, you don't need to manage that. We can manage it for you. And then we'll offer the ability for you to be easily able to integrate. So you don't need to like write a bunch of code, because it's the standard. There's a fair bit of code you could write. We could make it just like where it's one line or two lines. And by the way, that's the thing is what we launched last week. It's one line of code in JavaScript to add this to your middleware. So every time an API call comes in, you can just say, hey, if it's this API, charge this much, and respond with a 402. And so I think this goes back to our Rails conversation, which is like, to me, like the way to developer is hard. One of the key things is developer experience. And like there are good examples like MongoDB, Rails that have done an exceptional job in this. Heroku, Stripe, Twilio, these are all really great examples. So again, that's why we said we wanted to make a one line of code. And with that makes it super easy for you to be able to do it. But to your question, any blockchain is supported for the standard. And then we're going to start like where we're focusing our firepower is right where most of the developers are today, which is like Base and Solana is where we're getting started.
Awesome. Yeah, I love this because one of the things actually we're working on, I have a company called ABK Labs where we build open source software on Solana.
Yeah.
We automate the operations of Solana. So if you want to launch a whole cluster, like a permissioned environment, you can do that in 90 seconds with a couple, command line commands. Or you can just launch an RPC node on mainnet or a validator. We automate the whole thing. Like in a minute, you can do it on any infrastructure you want. And we're working on a protocol that will work in conjunction with that automation for automating, like I would say like 90% of the read layer on Solana. So like any validator can actually run a read layer node and send data to to developers who want it, in a more decentralized way, right? Like, so like the current landscape for RPC on Solana is pretty centralized. You have centralized companies that provide that data. And one of my key things was like, we still need an API. We still need like a centralized hosted API so that like developer experience is still really good. Cause they need to be able to consume that data from the network. And it would be much easier if I don't have to set up Stripe and make people pay in like using a subscription. And there's just like an automated way to pay for usage the exact way you guys have with the exact kind of standard that you guys have built. So it's like a very timely solution for me too. And we're not even building like an AI business. It's just, our customer base is crypto native developers who, I think would really like to pay this way.
Yeah.
Instead of paying like a monthly subscription for stuff they're not using.
And exactly. So like,
and then you can automate the flow of money from there too. So this is where you get into the AI native finance, right? Like, so whether you're an AI company or not, if you're paying for API access on chain, you can distribute that money to other people in an automated fashion. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we think that like, just like your company is a great example, is that anyone who's doing a crypto API, we think this is like a no-brainer within the crypto community. We're already used to crypto. And if anything, if this is successful, it'll drive more demand for your product because more and more people will need to come on chain and use that, which is awesome. And more people need wallets, et cetera, et cetera. So really excited about that part of it. And then what I'd say is like one other thing that we're doing that's pretty fun is AgentKit, that way to connect an AI agent to a wallet. We're adding support for X402 to VAP. So that way there's suddenly demand for all the APIs that are out there. And so if anyone who's listening, if you're a developer, you have an API, AgentKit will be able to support that. And when those people have tokens in their wallets, they can discover all these different APIs, including yours, Alex, and then be able to pay for that, which is really, really cool.
Right. So I can integrate my read layer service APIs into AgentKit, and then anybody building an agent can just pay for it. Like if it'll just be like, hey, I want to get this data from Solana mainnet for my trading bot, and it'll just be able to pay for all that data pretty easily.
That's probably the most popular use case we've seen is I want to build a trading bot. I need data, and it could be on-chain data, but it's also off-chain data. And that's when my AI agent needs to make smart decisions. And the cool thing is, it's an example where the AI agent could be making money. So it feels like a really natural business model, which is that if I make money out of this data, I can go spend that money out on different forms of signals that inform this. And so we're talking to multiple teams that are going to support that data. And like one vision we have is an AI wealth manager, right? And you're this AI wealth manager using AgentKit. It's an AI agent, maybe has some parameters. It can't, invest more than this much money, et cetera, et cetera. But then it can trade, it can arbitrage, it can do all that other stuff, get data to be able to pay for data to be able to do that. And some data may be a lot more expensive because, hey, it's super proprietary, or it's, super low latency. And so as a result, I get that data and I can make trading decisions on it.
Yeah. And what's really interesting too, is if you're building one of these agents or one of these trading bots and you understand how the economics of the network that you're trading on work and where you're getting the data from, you can design that bot in such a way that it can basically only make profitable trades. Like you can make it so that it's, or at least like extremely hedged where, you're not spending a ton on all that data that you need unless that transaction when it lands is going to make money. Yeah. Like has a really, really high probability. And I don't know how long that opportunity is going to last, but I know it's happening. I know it's happening at scale. Definitely on Solana and other networks where you're seeing a lot of bot trading activity. And yeah, again, you guys are just accelerating the way that people pay for all that data, all the APIs that they're using to make that happen, which is really, really cool. Honestly, I can't think of something I've been like this excited about recently from a technology standpoint. And it's really cool that it's a standard. I find that fascinating.
The thing I'll also do a shout out to is if you go to Bitcoin Talk, that's where everyone hung out in the early days of crypto. There are posts from 2012 and 2010 that talk about X402. But what's different now is that I think there's a few things that are different now that get us really excited. One is blockchains are so much faster and cheaper. So with 10-minute block times, and you have to wait 30 to 60 minutes for Bitcoin often to settle before you could feel comfortable there would be a double spend. That was a big issue. If you had to pay $5, $10, $50, $100 of fees, that was an issue in terms of people using blockchains. All that is different. And then the last part is that, by the way, like we haven't even talked about the non-AI use cases of this. So you could do paywalls with this as an example. So if a human in their browser had a wallet, suddenly like you can go to any website and it can tell you 402 and suddenly it pops up, like it pops up your browser and pay for it, right? So like all that is possible too.
It made that way simpler. Way simpler. I think again, this goes back, sorry to interrupt you, but it's like the indexer thing where we had to like invent a bunch of technology to get the data we needed from Solana. This is sort of similar. I've seen people try to do crypto powered paywalls before.
Yeah.
But there again was a bunch of custom engineering done to make that work. And this just makes it super, super simple. If server returns 402, show this message, and then it just shows the message and you either pay for it or you don't.
Yeah. And we have a demo actually at x402.org that anyone can check out, but it basically is a paywall. So you go to that, you press sign, or you press, unlock the paywall, and suddenly you pay. I think it's on testnet that we do it, and then you're done. Like that's it. You have access to that. So the reason I think we talk about that a little less in the earliest days is that my sense is the easier way to get it started is like through AI, because there is a need for an open API to be able to access money. And crypto is amazing for that. Like compare that to the traditional financial system, right? Which is like everything in crypto is working against building a better system than that. So if you're trying to do that, like this is an open access worldwide system that anyone can access. That is the power of crypto. And so we think that's a starting point. But again, if everyone had a wallet or anyone in crypto who has a wallet, this is super easy to do as well. It's like you can add that as a paywall. And by the way, we're talking to people who sell to people in crypto to get started as well as a way to add a paywall to your site to be able to access, any form of content.
I'm curious what the implementation was like on Ethereum or Base and Solana. Like if I'm a different chain, because you support those Base and Solana out of the gate, right? But if I wanted to add support on a different chain, is it like, I guess my only way of comparing it is to something like the NFT standards on Solana. And maybe this is just, my lack of understanding here, but the NFT standard on Solana like lives on Solana. It's a smart contract, and that's like what control. There's like a metadata standard, and then there's the actual like deployed contract, and then everybody kind of integrates with that. And Metaplex, for example, they charge a fee for using that standard, and they're able to do that because it's on chain. Is this kind of like that, where like if you install, is it like are there parts of the standard that like live on the network that everybody kind of interacts, or is it just a standalone thing that doesn't, it's like off chain?
So let me walk through how it works. Is that, let's say you're on the internet, not on a blockchain, but you're on the internet and you ask for an API. What you'll get a response is an X402, a 402 response, which is the HTTP status code. It will say, hey, you have to pay this much money in, for example, USDC to be able to access this. Then what the client does, the person requesting the API, so in this case, an AI agent or a human who's trying to go past a paywall, what they do is they say, okay, this is this much money. I need to send it to this address. Let me generate a transaction that I will sign and pass that along. So I don't need to broadcast it at all. I don't even need to have access to the blockchain. All I need to be able to do is have access to a private key to be able to sign a transaction. And I take that transaction and then I send it on HTTP to the website. So far, nothing has been broadcast to the blockchain. But again, like as an example in ERC20 and in Solana, like you're accessing ERC20 contracts, right? So there are contracts that you're interfacing, you have to like know about and say, hey, it's a USDC smart contract. I want to be able to spend those tokens, which means, transfer my balance from myself to this other address. So I signed that. I sent it on to the other side. Now, here we've done some thinking where one idea was like, as soon as like the API provider gets that same transaction, they could just broadcast it. And instead, what we said was like, what if you don't know how much it's going to cost, right? So like, let's say it's AI inference or it's a blockchain call, and you do one part of it and you realize actually it's going to be more expensive. What you can do is actually hold on to that transaction. So you do the work, you validate the transaction is going to be, accurate. It's going to be able to be, you're going to be able to get the money, but you hold it, you do the work, and then at the last step, you broadcast it. And then you broadcast it, and then you respond back with exactly what that client wants in terms of data. So that's kind of the whole loop. Really, the only thing the two parts that touch the blockchain. The first part, where you're signing a transaction, but you're not broadcasting it. And the last part where the API provider is going to broadcast the transaction.
So either the transaction like lands successfully because it covered the cost, of the data, or the fee that needed to cover the cost of the actual like transaction being sent. And then the API provider like reads the network, gets like data from like an RPC node that says, yes, this succeeded and you were paid the right amount. And then it sends the data back to the client.
Yeah, essentially. So the first step the API provider does is just make sure that the money is there, right? They're just verifying it. And then the last step is broadcasting it. And they'll broadcast it once they're done with the work. And then they send over the data that the client requested.
Okay. Is Coinbase the one that provides the, I mean, I guess anybody could do it because it's an open standard, but right now Coinbase is the one that provides that like response back to the API provider to tell them like you were paid or you weren't paid?
So you don't need Coinbase to use this at all, which is, again, that's why we're excited. Is like, it's a standard and this does not work if Coinbase is the only one that supports it. So like the whole vision with this is like, this is an open standard. And you're absolutely right. Is that like, you could literally have a blockchain node yourself, verify that they have the money, broadcast it, and you're done, right? So like you could use a blockchain node directly. Where Coinbase is like supporting the standard beyond just writing the standard is that we're doing two things. One is like the recipient needs a wallet, right? And some people may have wallets already, but other people don't. If you're not in crypto, you may not have a wallet. It's not super easy to do, and you want to just spin one up, and Coinbase can do that. So Coinbase Developer Platform, we have this wallet API. It's amazing. It's just about to go to beta this week, and we're going to launch production soon. But it is like great. And it's a wallet that you can spin up, number one. The second thing is that you just need to be able to check the blockchain state, right? And that's exactly what a node does. We just like wrap that and make it super simple. So it's one line of code. But again, all this can be done with a node. You don't need to go through us to be able to do that.
Yeah. Okay. So again, going back to the read layer data stuff, for us, if we wanted to add this as a service that we offer to anybody building AI agents on Solana, we could just use Coinbase to handle the wallet creation for us, and then just tie that into our API. And that's that's how we get the data to know whether or not we were paid or not. And we don't have to handle any logic really there. It's just the 402 standard just like checks and we get the right response. And then it will send the data from our RPC node back to whoever it is that we're servicing with that.
Exactly.
And they don't then the cool thing is like, I don't have to create a front end to at all really to like, have people pay me or sign up for my service or anything, really. Like, I just have to be able to accept money from them. They have to know where my API endpoint is. That's it. They need docs with API endpoints to hit.
And the cool thing is we're also going to make a discovery service. So we'd love to know when you launch this, Alex, because like we'll add it to our discovery service. So hopefully that'll drive more demand to your API as well. But agent can suddenly then like discover all these APIs and say, oh, actually, I want to use this. And, oh, this is how much it costs, and send money over. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Like the way I think about it is like, this is just like open source. It's like open access, anyone can do it. And if you want to make it super easy, we make some tooling that makes it even easier. So you don't need to hold your own wallet private key. We manage that for you, right? But that's optional. Like it's like some developers will like that because it's super easy and simple. Other developers are like, fuck it. Like I already have a Solana wallet, right? Why do I need, like, I don't need your managed service offering. And that's awesome. Like that's great as long as it works for the developer.
Yeah, that is great. I love it. And yeah, we're huge open source maxis at my company. So that's another reason why I was like super excited about this. And I think, yeah, my Y for ABK is just built together. You know, we believe open source software is the purest form of innovation. And I think the greatest legacy you can leave to the world as a professional, at least for me. I mean, my other greatest legacy are my kids. I've got 3. So, from my personal life, but, it's cool because this standard, again, I keep it going back to the velocity of money and the scale of having like 5.5 billion people on permissionless networks. I mean, you've probably seen on like the timeline for at least the Solana ecosystem, this whole theme of like internet capital markets moving at the speed of light. That's what you're bringing to APIs. And it's kind of hard to understate how transformational this might be. I don't know. Maybe I'm being overly bullish, but I think it's one of the bigger things that's come out of Coinbase. It might save a lot.
I mean, there've been folks on the team thinking about this idea for years, and we're like, when is the right moment to do this? I personally, by the way, I was at Mountain DAO with a lot of the Solana team in February, and it was so awesome to see the number of AI builders that were building there. Yeah. And when we were there, we announced that AgentKit supported Solana. So the version 1 was EVM, We expanded into Solana. We're really excited to be able to grow, within the ecosystem. And I think the biggest thing I just say is like for the developers listening, it's like all standards is that like it doesn't succeed unless it finds a use case, a home, and people value it and grow with it. And so that's the push that I have. And the biggest fear I have is like without things like this, like all of AI is going to run more on traditional financial system. And that like a lot of times when I see sometimes the debates we have in crypto with each other, I always think about like most of the world runs on traditional financial rails and they're integrated in so many different ways. And to me, like without standards like this, we're going to have the AI world is going to run on credit cards and they're going to run on more traditional payment methods. And there's a lot of reasons, right? Beyond just like send and receive of money, but like programmability, open access, all these other reasons why blockchains are so much better for this use case. And that's really what we want to capitalize.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Well, look, we're at the top of the show here. And I always ask the same question at the end, but what have I not asked you that I should have asked?
I think the biggest thing is like the use cases that I get excited about.
Let's go.
And so I think that like, for me, it's just cool to see the innovation these days. Social is probably like one area that I get super excited about, but just all the innovation experimentation going on. I feel like early waves of crypto where like everything looked like a financial app. And I've been seeing more and more that they look like a social app with financial elements. And that's something that I'm just super excited about. I think that's maybe one way in which we get 1 billion plus people like regularly on chain. Gaming is another one that I think there have been moments when it's been really hot and moments that have been less so. So that's probably like one area of just like, I just think about like, what are the different use cases that are really popular these days? And so some of the smartest builders I know are building things, in that vein.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like we're finally, I got into crypto in 2016 and there was a lot of things talked about during that hype cycle. You probably remember 2016, 2017 was kind of wild. And I feel like some of that stuff's actually becoming a reality finally. It's, 2025, going on 10 years here. It's taken us to actually realize some of these things. So it's cool to see it become a reality. Well, look, I appreciate you coming to the show. Really fascinating. How can people get involved? Like where should developers listening start?
Yeah, for X402, everyone can check out x402.org. There's a white paper. There's a really simple example that you can go through there. We have really like a wicked Telegram and Discord group where you can ask us questions and we can interact with the rest of the community because this is open. So there's a whole host of other teams that are involved, including Nanar, Proxy for 2, Hyperbolic. There's an Open Mind. These are all example companies that are working on this and building on it. So you can hear from them. And then if you want to access the managed version of this, if you want to look at on-ramps, wallets, any on-chain kit, all of that is available at cdp.coinbase.com. You can sign up, I think, in just a few seconds, and then access all our docs are available as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for coming on the show.
Cool. Thanks so much, Alex. Really appreciate it.